Whether you're dreaming of a retirement with sand between your toes and a cold one in your hand, hitting the road to chase the winds of adventure, or spending time with your grandchildren, this show is intended to help you get there. Welcome to Coasting in Retirement with your host, Josh Knoll. You've worked too hard throughout your career to spend your retirement worrying. So sit back, kick up your feet, because we've got lots of financial tips and tricks to share to help you get exactly where you want to be. Here's Josh.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in. Welcome to Coasting in Retirement. That's right. Thanks for joining us today. We're excited to have you. Josh Knoll here, joined by the one and only Michelle Lee Melton, the Bonnie to my Clyde, the Jules to my Vincent. Michelle, how you doing?
I've been defrosting all day.
Yeah, it's cold, right?
Well, it was colder in the office than I think it was outside where I work today. It was a little ridiculous.
Right? Yes, I hear you. Well, we're nice and toasty here back in Coastal College's recording studio, beautiful downtown Fairhope. Mm-hmm. And off we go today. So listeners, Michelle and I are here today to discuss financial topics relevant to those of you in or near retirement, living your best life along our part of the Gulf Coast. Here's what we've got in store for you today. First segment, deep dive on our topic of the day. Second segment, about 20 minutes past the hour, fan favorite, Michelle with the news of the week. Third segment, roughly 40 minutes past the hour, Joshua's crystal ball and big mouth. That's your cue. That's right, big mouth. So buckle up. We got a lot to get to. Quick background again for those of you new to the show. My name is Josh Knoll. I'm a fee-based financial advisor. I hold my FINRA Series 65 securities license, and I'm the owner of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. That is an independent investment management and financial planning firm. We have offices in Fairhope and Orange Beach, Alabama. You can find more information on me and Gulf Coast Financial Advisors by visiting our website, gulfcoastfa.com, or feel free to give us a call anytime, 251-327-2124. And if you just missed that contact info, do not worry.
We will repeat it.
We repeat it several times. So our topic today is something that just about anyone that is close to retirement, maybe even recently retired, has asked themselves. What should I do with my 401k or 403bs from my previous place of employment? Should I leave it where it's at? Should I roll into an IRA? If so, what type of IRA? What's the upside of doing a rollover? What's the downside? What if I have several 401k accounts? So these are all great and relevant questions that I'm sure many of you listening have asked yourselves at times. And to help this episode stick in your brain, what we're going to do is we're going to overuse the letter C to help us. Lots of C words. Lots of C words to help us answer these questions today. What I mean by C words: costs, control, consolidation. These are all three-syllable words here, Michelle.
Yeah, it's difficult.
It is. Coordination, convenience, conversion, contributions. You get the idea.
Yes.
Yeah, these are going to be important to the choices that you make. But before we get to our C words, just a quick note that some of you investors, unless your 401k plan specifies otherwise, I want to make sure as we dive into this, I want y'all to understand, we're going to be talking about rollovers into IRAs. You don't have to typically roll over an IRA or roll over a 401k into an IRA, again, unless your 401k plan specifies it. Typically, you can leave the money where it's at. You could possibly transfer it into your current employer's 401k plan for those of y'all still working. You could cash it out, which definitely is a case-by-case basis, but it's an option obviously available to you. Or you could look at what we're going to be discussing today, doing a rollover into an IRA. That IRA could be either self-directed or managed by an advisor like me. I also want to note to the listeners that here at Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, we do open up and manage 401k plans and IRAs. So we've got experience with both sides of the aisles. We're talking about this stuff. What we're going to discuss today is the different aspects of each type of account you want to consider when making these decisions. And in an effort to keep Michelle engaged in what can be a dry topic, I'm going to relate everything back to one of her favorite things to collect. Shoes. So,
oh my God, shoes.
There we go. All right, so here we're going to kick it off this way. Michelle, if you had to guess, how many pairs of shoes do you own?
It's a lot. I would say well over 200.
Oh my gosh.
And also that does not include the dance bag, which has probably 10 pairs of different types of dancing shoes in there with 4 pairs of tap shoes.
Well, that's even higher
alone.
than I thought. So
yeah.
All right. So keep that in mind, listeners. Michelle loves shoes, and she has over 200 pair that she knows of. So with that, let's start with our first C word of the day as it relates to an investor's decision to keep their money in a 401k or to initiate an IRA rollover in retirement. C word first is costs. So, Michelle, if you had the ability to buy an identical pair of shoes from two sources, but one is cheaper, and with that limited...
Let's just say less expensive because I like shoes and I like nice shoes.
That's a fair point. One is more affordable. Which one would you choose?
Okay, so it's the same shoe, but one costs more and the other one costs less, but
That's right.
Exactly the same.
Yes, very simple
Then
question.
I'm going to go with the lesser.
That's right. Okay.
Because of the need to fix shoes that I have for another C word, cobblers, which are very few and far between these days.
All right, so listeners, pin that in your mind, cost, right? We're going to discuss, it's not always apples to apples when you're comparing the cost in your 401k plan to the potential costs of an IRA, but it definitely is one of the first things you want to look at as you are comparing the costs across the different account options that you have, particularly those of you looking to have an advisor, again, like me, manage your IRA. So here's what I mean by that. Historically, the difference between the costs of a quote-unquote normal 401k plan compared to an IRA were not that drastic. But what has changed, particularly changed over the last 20 years, there's been, no doubt, there's plan fees, 401k fees have declined over that time period. It's called fee compression, and they continue to do so as industry consolidation has resulted in more plans and assets managed by fewer and larger entities. Some of you all will be familiar with Empower, Fidelity, John Hancock. You get the idea, right?
Right.
But even with those reduced 401k fees, you will still have some. So what are some of these types, and how do you find them? Here's a couple of examples of 401k plan fees. There's a thing called record keeper fees. The record keeper, I just mentioned Empower. That would be an example of a record keeper. There's admin fees. There's something called third-party administrator fees. That goes by TPA. You'll hear me refer to as TPA moving forward, not dissimilar to a CPA. And then if there's an advisor affiliated with the plan, there's advisor fees. These are the fees, everything I just listed. There has been downward pressure over the last several years. And remember, typically, it's the participants that carry the load of these fees, which means, again, you're probably carrying some level of cost associated with your 401k. A lot of times people are not aware that there is a cost, and if there is a cost, what are all the different components that go into it, those things we just listed. There's typically also expense ratios inside your investments that you hold in 401k plan. Now, locating the fees, it's not impossible, and a lot of times with a well-designed plan, it's not even that difficult, but there are times it can be a little bit of a pain. But the places you can look are participant fee disclosure documents. You could look at plan sponsor fee disclosure documents. There's a thing called the Form 5500. That's the IRS filing form. And then, of course, there's a summary plan description. 401k plans, they're not the only investment accounts that have been seeing what we call fee compression. IRA fees have also been reduced or eliminated by competition in industry. So while you definitely want to make sure you understand any account opening fees, maintenance or trading fees, when you're looking at an IRA, typically the biggest fee associated with an IRA rollover is going to be a fee paid to a financial advisor like me. So, for example, a lot of the nickel and dime fees associated with IRAs have been eliminated by competition. Michelle's familiar with Charles Schwab.
Yes.
Many would credit Charles Schwab with that. They were the first discount brokerage, and they have had a hand in getting rid of what I call a lot of nickel and dime stuff. Advisor fees are typically charged as a percentage of your overall account balance with a broad range. Usually that percentage will decrease with larger account balances. But just for sake of argument today, kind of an industry general rule of thumb to remember is a lot of accounts have what's called what is a 1% advisor fee. So for example, on $1 million in an advisor managed fee at 1%, you would pay $10,000 annually for the advisor fee. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so first is cost.
I appreciate easy math.
Easy math. So first up is cost. Next up on our shoe example. So Michelle.
Yes.
I now give you the option to buy two pairs of identical running shoes.
Running shoes, not interested.
Okay, two identical high heels.
Okay, go on.
One pair is $50 and the other is $100, which sounds like what you said earlier. I should add zeros there. One pair is $50, the other is $100. Based on this limited data, again, which do you choose? It's a setup question, right?
Okay.
You can choose a cheaper pair if they're identical, right?
Less expensive.
Yes. I got to remember that.
Yeah.
I need to use that when talking about my service. It's a less expensive option.
Exactly.
But wait, let's see if I change up a little things, this affects your decisions. What if the $50 pair of high heels, not running shoes, came only in black, and you really, really, really wanted blue to match your Mardi Gras dress?
Okay.
But there's no way to change this color from black on the more affordable option because the company has to offer the exact same color to all of its buyers. Would you choose a color just to save money? Would you choose a color you don't want to just save money?
I mean, most likely.
Well, what if you could get the $100 pair, put the blue out the window? What if you could get it any color you wanted? Choice.
I think double the price is a little extreme.
Okay,
for
fair
whatever.
enough.
And since I'm a shoemonger, there'll be other shoes.
Okay. Well,
the colors I want.
So here's the point. What that is, that's a question of our next C word. That's a question of control. And I'll even expand it to say, credit to Jay Stubbs, care, custody, and control. Here's the thing. The great thing about qualified retirement plans, such as a 401k or 403b, is that it has to treat all of its participants exactly the same way. Now, there are some provisions. Savvy listeners realize there are some ways to do some different carve-out things, but we're just talking about a generic, broad-based 401k. Everybody's going to be treated the same. That's a great thing. It's also a very frustrating thing because qualified retirement plans, like 401k, have to treat all their participants exactly the same way. So what that means is when you bought investments in your 401k plan, whether you knew it or not, you were selecting from a predetermined menu, and generally speaking, a menu with limited choices, and that menu was the same for every other participant in that employer-sponsored retirement plan. Got it?
Got it.
Now, to contrast that, in an IRA, typically you have more choices to choose from. So in Michelle's shoe example, maybe she was able to find the black high heels that were acceptable to her, but let's say that she really, really wants now is control over her shoe choice because she's going to 5 different Mardi Gras balls and she wants the exact same shoes, but she wants 5 different colors. What she wants the ability to be able to buy those different colors. And for many of you that are in or near retirement, your needs and wants may have changed too. You may need or want a wider variety of choices. And more importantly, having the ability to make these decisions about your IRA, because remember what IRA stands for, individual retirement account, to make these decisions without concern about other investors, that's definitely one of the key features of an IRA over a 401k or 403b. Got it?
Got it.
Okay. All right, let's talk about our next C word, consolidation. And I'm totally setting Michelle up with this one.
Okay.
Because I personally, I happen to know your your shoe storage situation. So, Michelle, let's say that you have shoes spread out all over your house.
That is correct. I actually do.
Master bedroom, back of the bedroom, closet.
All the spare bedrooms, closets. Yes.
You probably, as we just found out, you've got a stash somewhere I don't even know about with, what was the dance shoe bag? Didn't know about it. Okay. Now, if you had the choice to keep all of your shoes in one location, say a huge master closet.
Like overboard.
With floor-to-ceiling shoe racks.
Yes.
Would you prefer to have this over your shoes being spread out all?
I would. I would just hang out in there.
Okay. So you would prefer to consolidate all of your shoe storage location, right?
Yes.
So that scenario, in a fun way, applies to investors that have a handful or maybe several 401k plans from various places of employment. Some people are in lines of work where they go from different employment to different employment.
Yes,
right?
I've done that. I've had different ones. Yeah.
That's right. Many people don't know that you can roll as many different 401k plans as you want to into a qualifying IRA.
So there's no cap.
There's no
another C word.
That's right. We're going to talk about that. Main thing, you got to, for sake of brevity here, you just got to make sure you match up pre-tax accounts with pre-tax accounts, so on and so forth. You got to make sure the account types match, right? So why does consolidation matter? So one more last C word comes into play, convenience. It can be a pain to have several different accounts with different websites, different account statements, and Lord help us all, and particularly Michelle, different passwords to remember.
Password is password.
Right. So not to mention the convenience of requesting trades, account changes, rebalancing, etc. A lot of times, not always, but a lot of 401k plans tend to be fairly paperwork heavy as compared to their IRA brethren. But even if you look past the convenience aspects and getting back to the other C word, consolidation, when you have several different accounts, it can be very difficult to determine which accounts to take distributions from in retirement, as well as which accounts are invested per your time horizon, your risk tolerance, and your investment goals. So unless you have sophisticated financial planning software like we carry at Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, it is sometimes very hard to determine your total investment mix. How many equities do you have? What's the percentage of bonds? Do you have any alts in there? All those kind of things. One appealing thing then, as contrast with an IRA, is if you do decide to roll all of them into one IRA, Michelle mentioned caps. IRAs, savvy listeners will recognize this. IRAs have contribution caps based on your current year's income. Okay, there's different. We don't have time to go through the different ones, but a traditional and a Roth IRA will have a certain cap. A simple will have a cap, and a SEP will have a cap. But they don't have a cap on the amount of money you roll into them. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's upper limit cap somewhere, but for the normal retail investor, you're not going to bump up against a cap. Okay.
All right.
So it makes it a little easier. That's one appealing thing for sure about an IRA is that you can see and manage all of your investments in one place, just like if Michelle's shoes were all in one
Don't tease
closet.
me. That'd be amazing.
That would be amazing. All right. There's more C words we could use to explain, but I think listeners, I think you get the idea, right?
Yeah.
The decision to do a rollover or not always comes down to the needs of the individual investor, and there are certainly pros and cons with either direction you go. But I think if you do take the time to consider these factors, particularly if maybe you decide to work with a financial professional, whatever decision you end up making will help you sleep better at night and hopefully worry less about your money. With that, we can help with this process. And I can just tell you that we commit ourselves at Gulf Coast Financial Advisors to only making recommendations that are in your best interest, even if that means, and I've had some surprise people in the office on first client meetings before, even that means we don't get the business, because sometimes it's not necessarily in your best interest to roll out of a 401k for a variety of reasons, particularly some of y'all that are a little bit younger. It's hard. It's with fee compression. Sometimes it's hard to beat a well-designed 401k plan. So if you want to have an conversation about your existing 401k plan or plans, or maybe you've already got an IRA or you think about setting up an IRA and could use some guidance, then give us a call, 251-327-2124 for a no obligation, no pressure, no BS conversation. And also remember, you can find us at gulfcoastfa.com. That's Gulf like the Gulf of Mexico. Coast is in the show title. FA is in financialadvisor.com. All right, very good. So that was good. We got shoes worked in there.
Yes.
Does that make you so happy?
Love shoes. It makes me very happy.
Yeah, when I first started typing up our show outline, I thought, man, I am going to lose you 5 minutes
I'm already
in.
thinking, oh yeah, because this is complicated and
It's something that's not, but there's things that can bite you if you don't pay attention. All right,
Caustic.
All right, very good. Well, folks, coming up next, there's always a lot going on in the world, particularly the world of finance, investments, and money. Every week, Michelle and I scour what she calls the interwebs for helpful financial articles related to our topic of the day, especially articles that pertain to those of you in or near retirement. So I want you to join us after the break to hear Michelle and I discuss this week's relevant headlines in our Michelle with the News of the Week segment. Stay tuned. Whether it's building a business from scratch with your own two hands and wanting to maximize the financial impact of those sacrifices, or growing a great nest egg by being a dedicated and reliable worker for years, or choosing to live a life well within your means in order to accomplish a lifelong dream of retirement, the last thing you want is to go with the wrong financial advice after you've worked so hard to accumulate your assets. You've also probably spent most of your life putting others' needs ahead of your own, and now it's your turn. We can help. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors is a locally owned, independent, fee-based financial planning, investment management, and tax planning practice. We have offices in Fairhope and Orange Beach. We serve all of Baldwin County and the Gulf Coast. We also have an easy-to-understand fee-for-service model with no sales quotas, no proprietary products. Our ultimate responsibility is to our clients' goals and dreams. You can reach us at 251-327-2124 or find us online at gulfcoastfa.com. That's GULF like the Gulf of Mexico. Coast, FA is in financialadvisor.com. Welcome back to Coasting in Retirement. Your host, Josh Knoll here. So as we discussed before the break, every week Michelle and I scour what she calls the interwebs for helpful financial articles related to our topic of the day, especially articles that pertain to those of you in or near retirement. Our job is to help you all understand how these headlines impact you, especially when it comes to your money. And a little note, we also include the article links on our show transcript. We put that up on our website the Monday after the show airs on Sunday. That's gulfcoastfa.com. Just go to the podcast tab and you'll see a show transcript with if you like to read what we've been talking about, it'll be there. Plus, I'll have the show or the article links. But with all that said, and without further ado, here's Michelle with the news of the week.
Okay, first of all, newsflash, the federal government did not go out of business
Imagine
this week.
that. They found a way.
They kicked the can down the road to March. So
yeah, Michelle's referring to one of our past episodes where there was like 11 things for people to ignore in retirement, which is part of it is ignore news about government shutdown. All right, very good.
Okay, all right. So let's get started with a site that is geared more towards financial professionals rather than retail investors, but nonetheless has a fresh off the press article that applies to your topic of the day. Wealthmanagement.com's article is titled, Can 401k Plan Fees Fall to Zero?
Right.
Goose egg. This article does have a little inside baseball nerd feel to it, but I found a couple of numbers jumped out at me. First, got some questions.
Okay.
Did you know that there is $9.3 trillion in retirement plans?
I did not. If somebody had made me guess, I would have guessed somewhere around 5 to 6 trillion. So that surprised me a little bit.
And we're starting to get some trillionaires eventually, I think, too.
It's heading that way,
yeah.
Right? Okay.
And that an estimated $800 billion of that is expected to be rolled out into other accounts, presumably IRAs.
So somewhere in the neighborhood of 10%.
Okay. Yeah.
It seems like that's probably a fairly consistent number year to year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you also know that because of recent tax mandates and credits, the number of 401k plans is supposed to increase by 50% in the next 9 years?
I didn't know the exact numbers, but I knew that particularly coming out of COVID, there had been a lot of thought into incentivizing employers to offer 401k plans. So I knew the goal is to make it increase pretty significantly.
Do you know what a Henry is?
That is a high earner, not rich yet.
Yes,
that's
very
right.
good.
Right.
Okay, so this article touches on a lot of the fee discussion we had in the show opener, so I'm going to turn it over to you to give us your thoughts.
Well, so here's the thing. There's been a couple of what I'll call meta changes, big changes.
Can you use that?
I think I can use that. Yeah, okay. Meta was around before Meta the company. So
okay.
It's
in
been
the metaverse.
That's big changes have been happening in the 401k space for several years now. We've already discussed fee compression, but just to catch our listeners up, that's where record keepers, TPAs, third-party administrators, and advisors, anyone that's kind of got their hand in the 401k plan pie, they've had to lower their fees basically to be competitive, especially on larger plans. Okay. With margins being squeezed on the basic 401k plan fees, see above what I just said, there's been a pivot to what is called participant services. That is tailored services for 401k plan participants. One good example, a lot of savvy listeners will recognize this. Their 401k plan, or maybe one they've had before, may offer financial wellness training on top of your typical 401k plan service. That's an example of a participant service, okay? Another big change that applies to both the 401k world and the IRA world is the shift from brokers to commission-based brokers to fee-based and fee-only advisors that manage these plans in a fiduciary capacity. Okay, that's pushed fees down. Lastly, one more big change it's been going on for years, but as I mentioned earlier, it's definitely been accelerated with some of the legislation born out of the COVID era. Is that the government is trying to make it more attractive to employers to offer 401k plans. I mean, for a variety of reasons, Michelle, but probably most associated with them thinking we need to take future pressure off Social Security. That's my opinion, right? So now with all these changes, will the fees ever go to zero? I mean, maybe, but I don't think it'll happen anytime soon. As we've discussed before, there's still power in the personal touch.
Right.
Unless one of the big AI focused companies decides to come in and basically electronically squeeze out any middlemen or women, I would think that would probably be the biggest threat to reducing fee. I say threat, the biggest supercharge to getting that to closer to zero. The main thing that both employers and plan participants need to pay attention to in their plan is that it is competitive and that it is priced appropriately compared to other plans of similar sizes. So what I mean by that? That means that if you've got a plan of a certain asset size, it should fall in line. Let's say you got a plan with $10 million in it, you business owners. Plans in the relatively near area, or really literally kind of across the United States, but let's just keep it local or regional. Your plan should be very similar in cost, in features, in investment options, things like that. Now, you can find this information out if you business owners, again, or you plan sponsors, you can find out, is your plan competitive by doing what's called a benchmarking exercise. That's going to tell you how your plan stacks up against other similar plans like we discussed. And this benchmarking exercise, it's recommended, I believe it's the Department of Labor recommends it every 3 years. It's a compliance feature. It can be done completely confidential.
Another C word.
Right, your record keeper, your advisor, nobody affiliated with it, including even keeping your name, the plan name, completely confidential. It's a blind benchmarking exercise. That is something that can be done. It's also one of the services we offer at Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. You plan sponsors or business owners that are listening, if you want to have that conversation, give us a call, 251-327-2124. So that's wealthmanagement.com. That is definitely a little inside baseball. It's a good article, though.
Yeah. And it was short, so it was easy to read.
Right.
Okay, so next up, our friends from the Fool, Motley Fool that is. They have an article titled 4 Signs You Have a Bad 401k Plan and What You Can Do About It.
All right.
This article relates back to our shoe discussion in the opening segment. Oh my God, shiz. For example, one sign you have a bad 401k plan is high fees or costs, which would be paying more for certain shoes when I can get the exact same pair somewhere else for less.
Right.
Another sign of a bad 401k is limited investment choices, which means a lack of control.
And
Other
choice.
C word. There you go.
Yep.
The Fool also talks about a long vesting period and no employer match. So my main question to you is, in a world where these plans are so regulated, how are some 401k plans still allowed to be substandard?
Okay, that's a great question. And it comes back to benchmarking again. So obviously, Michelle, I go after new business, right?
Yes.
And, we are in growth mode, and we have a pretty good record of success in attaining new business. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, running our yap on the radio. But sometimes we do swing and miss. And here's kind of a typical scenario when you'll see some resistance on benchmarking. Let's say a business owner has a friend in the investment management space. That friend or buddy helps them open up a 401k. It's not that the advisor or the broker sets up the 401k plan and necessarily overcharges their friend. But what a lot of business owners forget is that there is a fiduciary responsibility to plan participants. And a lot of times when this plan has been set up years ago, if they haven't benchmarked their plan, again, recommended is every 3 years, but we see plans that haven't been benchmarked ever. There could be some red flags that emerge under an audit. It's kind of like similar to the IRS. It's not a problem until you're audited, and then it becomes a big problem, right? So we've talked about fee compression over the last 20 years, but it's really been accelerated over the last 5 years. So if you haven't taken a competitive look at your plan anytime recently, there's a very good chance that you are out of compliance, that you're not super competitive compared to other plans of your size and status. And more importantly, you and your employees are probably paying more than you should for your 401k plan. If you just want to be selfish about it, it's costing you money by not benchmarking because the market has gotten more competitive.
Sure.
And I know, listen, benchmarking, business owners typically are pretty busy. Plan sponsors, sometimes it's business owners, sometimes not. Sometimes, it sounds like a long and onerous process, but typically, if you can give the basic plan info to an advisor, again, like me, they can do a blind comparison test to other similar plans, and then give you the results. We at Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, we offer benchmarking and for free because we always feel like it's an opportunity to show the plan sponsor or business owner our skills. And honestly, more often than not, Michelle, the results are very enlightening. And here's the thing, for any of y'all listening that have a plan in place and you're like, benchmarking, shoot, I haven't done that. Even if you do a benchmarking exercise, and even if your plan is not competitive and needs some changes, even if you don't switch over to us, or let's say you do a benchmarking with another advisor, we and the other advisor should do as well. It's kind of a good faith thing that we do. We give you the information you need to go back to the negotiating table with your current record keeper, your TPA, or your advisor, or all three of them, right? If you've got fees that, again, are not competitive in 2024's 401k plan environment, then a lot of times sometimes it gets swept under the rug. It's not necessarily done nefariously, but a lot of times they're just hoping you don't check.
That was the Motley Fool.
That was the Motley Fool. Very good.
Yeah.
All right, good job, fools.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Next article is from the Smart Alex at Smart Asset, titled 5 Retirement Rollover Mistakes to Avoid. So I'm getting familiar enough with the different rules around retirement accounts to know that if your 401k plan sends you a check for a rollover, you have up to 60 days to deposit it into an IRA, or you'll owe income taxes. Plus, we've discussed many times that the account types have to match.
Right.
Same. If you're rolling over a pre-tax 401k, it has to go into a pre-tax traditional IRA.
Unless you do a Roth conversion, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Okay, that's another C word. What I didn't know was that there are different rules for people age 55 to 59 and a half, or that there is a difference between direct and indirect rollovers.
Okay.
This article also was death by 10%, but
yes. So the early withdrawal penalty.
Yes, it's everywhere.
It's
what
a big one.
seems as a relatively simple thing to do, roll your 401k into an IRA, can get really screwed up if handled improperly. So can you elaborate for our listeners?
I can. So one of the things, Michelle, this article mentions
10%.
It mentions that a lot, the early withdrawal penalty. But one of the things it mentions that we occasionally see is a plan participant choosing an indirect rollover versus a direct rollover. More often than not, you want to choose the direct rollover option if it's available. Why is that? Well, when you request an indirect rollover, your employer is required by the IRS to withhold 20% of the balance for taxes, even if you're planning to complete the transfer or the rollover to an IRA within 60 days. You also have to replace that amount that was withheld when you finalize a rollover. Otherwise, the IRS treats that as a taxable event. Okay, so choosing a direct rollover instead, that generally speaking will simplify the process and allow you to sidestep any tax whammy, double tax especially. Now, Michelle, you also mentioned that different rules apply to age 55. What that means is that if you leave your job and your retirement account stays with your now previous employer, you can take distributions without paying the 10% early withdrawal penalty. Okay.
Yep.
Now that 10% early withdrawal penalty will automatically fall off when you hit the year you turn 59 and a half. Okay. That's when that goes away. But until then, if you keep the plan at your previous employer as a 401k. Now, when you roll the money over into an IRA or another qualified plan, you lose this advantage. Honestly, for a lot of people that don't plan on touching their 401k account well into retirement, this is not a big deal. But those of you listening that are fortunate enough to retire early or planning on retiring early, this is something that needs to be taken into consideration. And it's something we definitely help you all navigate. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, 251-327-2124. We got another one?
We've got one more.
Okay.
This article is both another good use of the odd number 5 and a reminder of an episode we did back in August of 2023 called The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Roth Conversions.
Yes.
Which listeners can find on your website or on Spotify. Anywho, the article is found on Forbes and is titled 5 Ways a Roth IRA Can Ruin Your Retirement. I had a couple of takeaways. First, it makes total sense that if you do a Roth conversion of a pre-tax account and pay all or most of the taxes due up front, you need to have enough of a time horizon for your investments to make up the amount of money paid in taxes.
Right. We talked about that in the example. If you, we just used raw math. If you did $1 million Roth conversion from a 401k plan or a traditional IRA, and we just threw a number, like let's say the tax bracket was 30% all in, that's $700,000. You're going to have to make substantially higher returns on that $700,000 to get back to $1 million. Sorry to interrupt you, but
that's all right. No.
That's a great point.
Okay. Secondly, because no taxes are withheld on your Roth IRA distributions because the taxes have already been paid,
right,
people sometimes take too many cookies out of the cookie jar and deplete their Roth IRA account prematurely. I know Roth conversions are something you handle with lots of due diligence. So what do you have to say about this article? Well,
one of the reasons we focus so much on handling Roth conversions with due diligence, because it's just like the previous episode we talked about 72T. There's some things that are programs that are completely legitimate. Roth conversions, backdoor Roth, 72T, all these things. They're there. It's a legal thing to do, but a lot of times it's used as a sales tactic. It's used as a hammer in search of a nail, okay? And that definitely applies to Roth conversions. It's a way for advisors to go out and kind of, just to gather assets that they may not have had a chance to get otherwise, okay? That, just to be fair, you advisors listening, some of you know what I'm talking about. So when you're doing the Roth conversion, you've got to think about it several different things. If you've got somebody that is retiring into a significantly lower tax bracket, you need to have the conversation, because if you're putting out illustrations and numbers based on them staying in the current or near tax rate that they're in, the projections that you're going to have on your Roth conversion are going to be inaccurate. Okay. The second thing is, just Michelle mentioned it, or another thing is, Michelle mentioned that you want to make sure you got enough time horizon. The example we gave you where you got to make up $300,000 or maybe even $400,000 in taxes paid. And that's if you do it all at once. Of course, you can do Roth conversions over time, but you still got to make sure you got enough time horizon to make that up. It's got to, the raw math has to add up when this is all said and done. And then the other thing she touched on that's in the article that's a great point, it works as a little bit of a governor. When let's say you've got $1 million in your IRA, Michelle, and you go to take a withdrawal and you want to get $50,000 out, right? Okay. And let's say that you're going to have to pay $13,000 of that in taxes. This is just raw numbers we're using here. So that leaves you $37,000. That kind of works as a governor because you think, and I've seen this. Now, sometimes you have a systemized withdrawal, and that's just, you know that, you pay the taxes, you move on. But for the folks that kind of start dipping into it a little too quick without a financial plan in place, when you see that number disappearing to taxes, it kind of gives you pause. Mm-hmm. Well, you don't have that governor on a Roth because the taxes are already paid. So if you want $50,000, boom, guess what? Here's your $50,000, right? So you got to project this stuff out. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit more of this later with do-it-yourselfers. Of course, you can. I mean, a spreadsheet. You can use online planning software. There are ways to kind of look at making sure that you don't run out of money. But it's one of those. It's one of the value adds that a good fee-based or fee-only financial advisor brings to the table, helping you do an income solve. And also not here to, as I've said many times on the show, I'm not here to slap my client's hand, but we definitely can be a voice of reason sometimes when people are trying to get into their accounts. So that is very, very good. Is that it?
That is all.
All right. Well, Michelle, great job as always with the headlines.
Thank you.
These are all important pieces of information that impacts those of you in or near retirement. So listeners, if you have questions around these topics in our headlines, or if you just have questions related to your investment strategy or your financial plan or income planning like we just talked about, why don't you give us a call, 251-327-2124. You can set up a conversation, or you can even make an appointment, come into our office in Fairhope or Orange Beach, depending on where you're located. And of course, you can always reach us, send a message to us on our contact page on the website, gulfcoastfa.com. GULF, like the Gulf of Mexico. Coast is in the show title. FA is in financialadvisor.com. All right, folks, coming up next, Josh's crystal ball and big mouth. What have been some of my predictions? Have I been right? Was I ever wrong?
Michelle? Of course not.
No, of course not. No. What do I think is going to affect investors in the near future, or maybe even the distant future? We talk about all these things and poke a little bit of fun at my big mouth. Stay tuned. Whether it's building a business from scratch with your own two hands and wanting to maximize the financial impact of those sacrifices, or growing a great nest egg by being a dedicated and reliable worker for years, or choosing to live a life well within your means in order to accomplish a lifelong dream of retirement, the last thing you want is to go with the wrong financial advice after you've worked so hard to accumulate your assets. You've also probably spent most of your life putting others' needs ahead of your own, and now it's your turn. We can help. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors is a locally owned, independent, fee-based financial planning, investment management, and tax planning practice. We have offices in Fairhope and Orange Beach. We serve all of Baldwin County and the Gulf Coast. We also have an easy-to-understand fee-for-service model with no sales quotas, no proprietary products. Our ultimate responsibility is to our clients' goals and dreams. You can reach us at 251-327-2124 or find us online at gulfcoastfa.com. That's GULF, like the Gulf of Mexico, Coast, FA is in financialadvisor.com. Welcome back. Your host, Josh Knoll, here alongside co-host Michelle. So, Michelle, I am opinionated.
Yes.
I have strong opinions at times. Mm-hmm. I would say a radio show host that isn't probably wouldn't be very interesting, right? Wouldn't be interesting to listen to. And of course, I'm paid in my profession as financial advisor to offer professional guidance and opinions to my clients. Otherwise, what use would I be? So sometimes I feel so strongly about something, I talk about it publicly. And while I'm an optimistic person in normal life, I'm a little skeptical of my own industry. A lot of times my predictions are a little skeptical, and they usually are proven right. There are times where I swing and miss. So if you listeners, if you want to hear me eat a little crow, let's get at it with Josh's crystal ball and big mouth. What you got first?
All right. First is one of our favorites.
Oh, no.
It's back for your birthday. Okay. It's been fair to say that the more research and reporting we've done on cryptocurrency for the show, the more critical we've both become.
Right.
Especially Josh.
Yes.
So wouldn't you know it that your financial fairy godmother decided to give you a birthday present with the SEC approving rule changes that resulted in the green lighting of 11 different spot Bitcoin ETFs on January 10th, which is Josh's actual birthday, listeners.
Yep, right on my birthday.
Yes. However, they were hacked the day before stating the same thing, which I thought was hilarious.
I mean, that
kind of makes you nervous.
Kind of makes sense.
It's funny and telling in so many ways.
There you go.
Okay, so apparently nearly $3 billion has flooded into these funds since then. So does this change your opinion on crypto? What's your big mouth got to say about Bitcoin now?
So does this change my opinion on crypto? No.
Okay.
No.
I knew that.
Yeah, so Michelle's talking about this on January 10th. They approved 11. Well, what they did was they basically made a rule amendment, which more or less gave the green light to 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs. So let's break that down just a little bit.
Okay.
A spot means that as opposed to being able to invest in something that just kind of tracks the like a futures market, if you will, where you're kind of making a bet on if something's going to go up or down. The spot Bitcoin ETFs, per my understanding, are going to hold digital currency inside their digital cryptocurrency in there. Okay. So there's going to be real ownership. Oh. ETF stands for exchange traded funds. They're kind of a slightly newer version of mutual funds we've talked about in the past. We'll talk about it again on future episodes. But what I do think, so no, doesn't it change my opinion? No. And I'm going to talk about why. But first, I think this is really interesting. You said $3 billion flooded into the fund since then. Mm-hmm. I'm really curious to see what this is going to do to the existing exchanges, the cryptocurrency exchanges. Savvy listeners will recognize that word as FTX was an exchange where people could go and buy and sell cryptocurrencies. You all know
what happened there.
Right. Coinbase, which I believe is the biggest one. What's this going to do to the exchanges? Because those exchanges because crypto, despite its promises, is kind of a pain to trade and do things with. And so they were able to have relatively higher margins for these things. The exchanges, the things that we're going to do, that the Bitcoin ETF are going to be trading on, are without a doubt going to have lower fees. So I'm curious to see, one of the podcasts I listened to give due credit, they think that Coinbase, which is, I believe, again, is the largest crypto exchange, is going to become the AOL of, that's going to become what AOL was to the internet. That Coinbase is going to become that.
Still a thing?
Yeah. Well, no, it's saying remember back when we were in the 90s, when we were, high school and college, to access the internet, you had to have this floppy disk that you'd get out of a cereal box and you'd, right?
Yeah, it's like a robot.
And then once all more easy access to the internet came along, AOL, which I think is actually still in existence, but the dominance of AOL faded quickly. That it wouldn't surprise me if that happens to the existing exchanges.
Okay.
If you could buy if you just were dying to buy Bitcoin ETF, Michelle, would you go? Would you go to Schwab or Fidelity, or would you go to Coinbase? Right. You're going to go to the name you know and trust.
Schwab, because Chuck's my buddy.
There you go. So, but here's the thing. Why do I? It's fine, but there's still no way that those of you in or near retirement should invest money in this unless it's your play money.
Yeah.
Because again, remember this: we don't know who started it. That Satoshi is either a group of people, unknown person, a mastermind criminal, or he doesn't even exist. No one
Wizard
knows.
Of Oz.
So we don't know who started it. There's no underlying value. There's no use case, and at least on the consumer day-to-day basis. There's no true currency. There's no currency value. And what I mean is there's no way for you to, in most strong sovereign nations, you're not going to be able to trade it because I use Bitcoin to buy a cup of coffee in the morning for $5, and later that day that may be 5 cents or maybe $5 million, from all the volatility. There's no revenue. There's no well-known products. I mean, stop me when I tell you something that makes it sound appealing. I want you all to understand, all investors, but those of you in or near retirement, if we're talking play money, casino money, fine. Do what you will. But the difference between, even though it sounds more formal, an ETF, exchange traded fund, the underlying holding still has no revenue. It has no use case. It is called the greater fool of investing. Do you know what that means, Michelle?
The greater fool of investing?
Yes.
I mean,
that means that if you want to sell something for a gain, you got to find a greater fool than yourself.
Than yourself.
Right.
Okay. It's like if you represent yourself in court.
Right. And as opposed to exchange, as opposed to buying and selling a stock of a listed company, a market listed company that's got actual revenues, got equipment, it's got real estate, it's got actual, we talked about this last episode, there's intrinsic value to that company. There's no true intrinsic value to cryptocurrency. And crypto bro, saying it's digital gold. I know what gold is.
Yeah, that ain't it.
And that ain't it. Yeah, this honestly reminds me, Michelle.
Gold, I picture it being piled up in the bank vault, and you can actually see it and step over it. It's heavy.
Well, you're a history buff. We don't need to talk about much, but this reminds me of the Dutch tulip mania from what is that, 1600s?
I think it was later than that, but same. I mean, that's actually a great book called The Botany of Desire.
Right.
It has a whole chapter about that.
Yeah, or the .com bust, or even Beanie Babies. It just reminds me of all of these things rolled up into
Cabbage
one.
Patch Kids were before Beanie Babies.
We'll see. Greater fool. Who's going to be standing when all the chairs are gone? We'll find out. Unfortunately, as I've said many times, usually it's retail investors that get left holding the bag on this nonsense. So there you go. All right, what's next?
All right, Josh. You've often said of this, someone has the know-how and desire to manage their own investments. They should give it a shot versus hiring a broker or advisor. But they needed to be very careful in how they set up and manage their accounts, particularly any IRAs.
Okay.
So we discussed in the opening our news headline segment that there are several potential pitfalls for making mistakes in a 401k to an IRA rollover, and that's even when an investor gets professional guidance. So I think it should come as no surprise that the SEC issued an investor alert this past year regarding self-directed IRAs and the risk of fraud.
Right.
And looky here, it even has a section about cryptocurrencies. What a shocker.
Yeah, surprise, surprise.
Anywho, given the complexity and potential fraud, do you still hold that there's nothing wrong with the do-it-yourself investing crowd?
Well, all right. So you're getting to know the nerdville that is this industry, right? And there's probably somebody listening right now that is a boglehead. All right. So Bogle started, that's the last name of a guy that started Vanguard that was all about low-cost index funds and doing it yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and has a loyal following, pretty passionate about doing it themselves. And, my thing is, it's kind of like, as you and I have talked before, I've built houses, I've ran heavy equipment, I've done a lot of construction things. There's a line there somewhere where if I can get something done and I can get it done to a high level and I can do it myself and save a little bit of money, no one's going to tell me I can or cannot. I know what I can and cannot do to some degree. And that applies towards investors too. If you've got the ability to do this yourself and set up investment accounts, and you know the difference between the IRAs, you know the difference between an individual or a non-qualified and all these things, and you can handle it without biting yourself in the butt, fine, right? But the problem is a lot of times there are so many rules around this stuff. There are so many potential miscues that can lead to significant tax consequences. This article mentions fraud, which a lot of times, what people don't understand, fraud in the financial services industry a lot of times comes down to custodial issues. A lot of people are familiar with Madoff, custodial issues, Bernie Madoff. All right, so Bernie Madoff had two things going. He had discretion, which is very common for a financial advisor, but he also had custody. So he had full access to everybody's funds. A lot of times when you do this, a lot of these advertisements for self-directed IRAs, they're with unknown little-known custodians versus like a Charles Schwab or a Fidelity, and it just opens you up for more nefarious things to possibly happen in there. Plus, too, there's not going to be any governor. We talked about that earlier. There's no governor to holding alternative investments. Nothing inherently wrong with alternative investment. Sometimes people come in don't know that there's not much liquidity to some of them. There hasn't been much disclosure made. There's just a lot of things that could pop up. And so back to my example of doing it myself, there is a tipping point where paying somebody a reasonable fee to help safeguard against making mistakes, plus if maybe my time is spent better else doing something else, like being a radio show host and a financial advisor versus a home builder again, we'll find out. But so it's kind of a mixed answer to you, Michelle. Yeah, if you got the ability with all the tech that's out there, then you're not going to be happy paying somebody to do what you think you can do yourself. I will say, however, we have picked up more than a handful of clients. Don't mean to pick on them, but a lot of times they've done it themselves and things didn't work out. It didn't work out, and so they came for help.
That's right.
Either way, it's fine. Very good.
Okay.
One more.
We've got one more. You stated that investors would be mildly surprised if they knew how old the average advisor is in your industry, financial advising, investment management, and or financial planning.
Right.
But they would be shocked if they knew how few advisors have a succession plan in place. Add to this that the number of the new advisors coming into the industry with a recent report on Fox Business that claims your industry actually declined by 50,000 members since 2021 from 330,000 to 280,000. Mm-hmm. So I bring this up to put a little shine on you because while you may be considered middle-aged by general population statistics, we are, but we're actually young when it comes to medical stuff too.
Right.
But at our age, we're almost a shiny new penny among your financial advisor peers.
Right.
So what's your crystal ball got to say about the aging out of your industry and what this means for investors?
Well, so first, that $50,000 drop, I'm going to take a stab. That was a lot due to COVID. COVID really washed out a lot of our industry, people in our industry that didn't have the stomach. That I called it the hiding under the desk advisor. When the market dropped so rapidly and for such a weird reason, they didn't know. A lot of them. Well, the market had been up for so long. If you had started in our business from 2010 or 11 or 12, you've never known anything but an up market, and now you've got 30% wiped out in a couple days, right? And so I think that bled out a lot of people. But on the flip side of that, age is not necessarily a bad thing. I'll take experience and cunning over youth and enthusiasm any day. And, what I do, financial advising and all that, it's usually not physically demanding. I'm not working in a coal mine here.
That's right.
So you can do it for a long time. I think what's probably more concerning is there is definitely a lack of new participants. There's definitely a lack of succession planning. We have a succession plan at Gulf Coast Financial Advisors.
All the young people are influencers.
You're right. They're all influencers. And part of it too, why don't people start on this industry? Because a lot of times they start out in meat grinder shops that run them into the ground with little to no pay. Me, and I was just either determined or deranged enough to make it. And the sad thing is, there's a lot of times there's experienced advisors in these groups that could help these younger advisors. Instead, they wait on the sidelines to scoop up whatever clients they have when that advisor quits, whatever clients they leave behind. So yeah, it's kind of a dog-eat-dog business. I get it. A lot of times that you're coming in, you're working on a very small base pay, or sometimes you're working on a draw, or sometimes you're just working right off the bat on a fee or a commission, and it's hang a shingle and say, hey, give me your money right off the bat. That's a tough call.
Yeah.
It takes time. It took us time. It took me a long time to become legitimate. So yeah, people would definitely be shocked. It's one of the things you definitely want to ask your financial advisor. I got asked this week. It was kind of fun. You have a succession plan in place. Yep. Okay. And you want to know this, and it's something you need to know because, things happen to good people, and your financial advisor bites the dust. You need to know what phone call you need to make. So was that it?
That is all, folks.
All right, very good. Well, listeners, I hope you enjoyed a peek behind the curtain, how I form my opinions and predictions. And more importantly, I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong, which isn't very often, but still. So now to our listeners out there that you have more questions on the various investments and topics that we discussed in this segment, we invite you to reach to us. Call us anytime, 251-327-2124. Or you can go on our website. You can message us. Or in the upper right-hand corner, there's a green button that goes to my calendar. You can set up a little 15-minute introductory conversation with me. That website, again, is gulfcoastfa.com. Folks, that is here. That is it for this week here at Coast and Retirement.
Do you want to say go Chiefs for later on tonight?
Maybe. Yes, go Chiefs. All right. Kansas City, lived there 16 years. I want to give a huge thank you to my lovely co-host, Michelle Lee Melton.
Welcome.
Thank you to our awesome radio station, FM Talk 106.5 out of Mobile. Many thanks to our provider of our show music, that's local band Sloth Racer. Many, many thanks to our producer and editor, that's Chazare Gray. Great job, Chaz. And as always, my sincere appreciation for all of you out there that have been listening and joining us on this journey. We would love to be a part of your financial journey as well. Till we talk again next Sunday, have a wonderful and productive week. This has been Coasting in Retirement with Josh Null.
Advisory services offered through Prime Capital Investment Advisors, LLC, a federally registered investment advisor. Prime Capital Investment Advisors, LLC, 6201 College Boulevard, 7th floor, Overland Park, Kansas, 66211. Prime Capital Investment Advisors, LLC, doing business as Prime Capital Wealth Management and Qualified Plan Advisors, and Gulf Coast Financial Advisors are not affiliated. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, Prime Capital Investment Advisors, Prime Capital Wealth Management, and Qualified Plan Advisors do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. This content has been prepared for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for tax, legal, or accounting advice. The information provided herein is not a complete analysis of every material fact regarding any strategy. It is intended only to provide insight into the opinions of the author. All information presented is for educational purposes only and is not an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any securities. Content offers commentary and generalized research, not personalized investment advice, and is for informational purposes only and does not constitute a complete description of our investment services or performance. All investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified legal professional and/or tax professional before implementing any strategy discussed here.